So again, I'm having another little rant about the textbook. But it's not, some people said I didn't like this textbook. That's not true. I don't like any textbook because I think they're all stupid. And there's a whole host of reasons why they're all stupid. But this is one of them. I think often you can read a textbook and completely miss the point about why the hell we're teaching this, because you get so caught up. And, you know, chapters, 6, 7, and 8, I think are examples of this. You can get so caught up in all those stupid little curves that you completely miss the goddamn point of all of this entire section of economics, which is that the structure of markets matters. Those stupid little curves do not matter. So what I'm going to be talking about for this class is not those stupid little curves, because I hate them. The really sad thing is if you go and do real economics, like you go to graduate school, do a PhD in economics, you don't see those fucking little curves. They don't teach them. They teach game theory. They teach a whole bunch of maths, but they don't teach those stupid little curves. So why do you force first-year students to do something that, you know, your PhD students can't, wouldn't, and don't see the point of doing? It's stupid. It only exists in this tiny little world called first-year economics, which has nothing to do with the rest of economics at all. It's very strange. It's like, you know, you were taught biology, and then next year you went into second year biology, and they said, forget everything you learned, because now you'll learn real biology. That first year was just, I don't know, some cruel joke. But that's what a lot of this appears to me. So I don't teach those little curves. So I want you guys to focus on the intuition. So this class is about concepts and applications. So what I want you guys to get is what the hell the point of this is. So I want you to see the forest for the trees and not just look at the trees. Okay? So what are we doing? We're talking about markets. So for economics at the micro level is markets. That's what it is. If you don't understand markets, you haven't gotten the point. The whole point of micro is markets. How markets work, what they do, what they achieve, whether they're working well or not. What do we mean by well? How we could try to fix them, what the government can do, what the government can't do. All of those things are all about markets. So micro is markets, that's it. We're teaching here two different types of markets. One called perfectly competitive markets and one called monopoly markets. Now, I don't actually assign the chapter here in the book on perfectly competitive markets. The reason for that is you've actually done them. When you did chapter 3, that was perfectly competitive markets. And then you go, oh, so why am I reading chapter 4 then if I've already done perfectly competitive markets? The answer is chapter 4 learns you, it's in chapter 4 or 5, learns you those stupid little curves. I don't want you guys learning those. They're somewhat useful, but they're nowhere near as much use as trouble. So I prefer to skip them. So in this class, we teach two extreme types of markets. The perfectly competitive one, which you've already read about in chapter 3, and the monopoly one, which is in chapter 8, is it? That's the reason why we do this funny sort of jumping around. I'm trying to avoid those curves. So we have these two extremes. Why? Well, the reason is that we're really going to be comparing the two. That's the important thing. What do monopoly markets look like, and how do monopoly markets compare to perfectly competitive? So what can we say? What are our predictions of these two sorts of markets? What's the difference between the two? That's what I want you guys to focus on. So what do monopoly markets achieve and why? And what do perfectly competitive markets achieve and why? And why might we choose one over the other? So it's a comparison. So unfortunately, the book, as I say, it spends way too much time fiddling with these little curves and not enough time teaching what the markets mean. So that's what I want you guys to learn. Okay. So think about this simple little diagram. So I've got a little diagram up here. I've got, in a sense, two extremes. At one pole, you've got perfectly competitive. You've already done those. And the other pole, you've got monopoly. The way I want you also to think about is that they're really talking about how many sellers are in this market. How many people are selling goods? In perfectly competitive, we're saying there's lots of sellers. What does lots mean? I don't know. Doesn't matter. A big amount. Lots is like the number of shops that you can buy coffee at in Melbourne. Right? If you don't want to go to this shop, you can walk about that block down there and that block there, and there's another shop that sells coffee. If you don't like that one, you can cross the road. There's another shop that sells coffee there. Right? That's what perfectly competitive markets are like. If you don't like this place, cross the road. There's another guy who sells pretty much exactly the same thing. for exactly the same price. That's perfect competition. Monopoly, like I said, is the other extreme. Right? Perfect competition means you've got lots of sellers. Monopoly is one. Monopoly is like coffee on Bathurst CSU campus. If they make crap coffee, what choice do you got? None. None. You think their coffee's shit? What can you do? The answer is there's nothing where else to go. You could go to Mitchell Cafe, which has even worse coffee. That's a monopoly. So it's one of the puzzles is actually, as an economist, why the hell do universities always set up monopolies? As we'll show later, monopolies perform really badly. They do very poor jobs. Universities seem to be about the one place in the universe that we still think monopolies do a good job, like CSU catering. If you go to a CSU room and you try to get food in, you can't actually get food in unless you use Mitchell Catering. What's the quality of Mitchell Catering like? Answer, terrible. Once you've had it like me for 8 years, you really do want to stick a gun down your throat rather than have to eat another one of their sandwiches again, right? It's seriously, it makes me depressive just to walk into a meeting and see that platter there and know that platter is the same damn platter that's been put in front of me for 8 years now. That's monopoly. So monopoly is there's just one seller, the two extremes. Lots, Melbourne Coffee, one, CSU Catering. So that's what I want you to think about. Those are the two extremes. There's a third option, right, which is called imperfect competition. And I think there's probably a chapter called duopoly, oligopoly, or something like some other opoly thing in there. Again, I don't want you to learn it because the sort of intuition you get is very marginal, doesn't improve much comparing perfect competition monopoly. 2, it introduces a whole bunch of really crap mathematics. So no. What I want you to have is monopoly in your head, perfect competition in your head, and then to think about the real world might be somewhere in the middle. Right? The real world is there's just a few sellers. So the real world is like, say you want, go grocery shopping. Well, you got Coles and Woolies, and then there's IGA. And that's pretty much it. Maybe Harris Farms, which I think might be owned by Woolies. Got to be careful because actually these guys all own each other. So even though you think this is looking like a great market, lots of competition, not really. It's like margarine. There's dozens and dozens of brands, but look on the bottom, they're all put out by the same 2 or 3 companies. That's not competition. That's just fake competition. That's what we call imperfect competition. So imperfect competition is somewhere in the middle. There's not one person. There's not a bunch of people. There's just a couple. Why do I skip the middle one? And the reason is, actually, like in most modeling, the middle one is really hard. The extremes are easy to model. As you see, perfect competition, you already did it. Monopoly, we'll go through today. Imperfect competition, they teach courses on that in graduate school. Entire courses. There's shelves and shelves of books written on imperfect competition. Models, there's hundreds of them, right? Which means, so why do people invent hundreds of models of oligopoly? Well, you've always got to think that whenever you're looking at it. You think, man, why do they have 12 different models of the mind in psychology, or 25 or 30? And the reason is, of course, because none of them actually work. Right? If any of those models, if any one of those 30 worked, they'd be using that one. The problem is they don't. The reason is because the models are crap. So whenever you see more than one model, it means whatever model we got is only partial and doesn't really explain it. So we've got to kind of shop around. So you use this model for this and that model for that, and use a different model, and then a different model in this. Different contexts, different people, different behavior. Psychology has a problem, but we got the same here. Each one, we have lots of different oligopoly models. Each one of them works sometimes, other times not. So they're just not very good models. So we have a lot of them. And again, I don't think that you get a lot of gain from studying that as opposed to just having the basic perfect competition, monopoly, and then think about somewhere in the middle.